Awesome. Bobby Stuckey, welcome to Heroic Hospitality.
Well, Mario, thanks for having me. Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
A living legend that still works in the biz and is active in his own restaurants and businesses. That's amazing. You don't see that a lot these days.
Well, they always say this story, stay in your lane. Well, 2 weeks ago was 40-year anniversary of me bussing tables, and I'll be bussing tables tonight. So that's when people talk about people staying in their lane, maybe I'm just a one-trick pony. I don't know.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, we've had a long friendship. You're over coming on 30 years, if not 30-ish year. I mean, we're right there.
We're right there.
Which definitely dates us a bit. But Bobby Stuckey, a devoted husband, master sommelier, tons of James Beard Awards, a lot of accolades within the restaurant business, recently a Michelin Star, which I'd love to get your opinion on at some point during the interview, a cookbook author, which I mean, that just came out of nowhere for me, which was unbelievable. I remember being in Friuli with you and all the content that you were taking, right? Like, were those trips like secretly creating content for this cookbook, or like was it?
I think those trips over the years gave us the backbone to do the book. But really, once we decided to do the book, we worked with an incredible co-author, cookbook author, Meredith Erickson, and she's amazing. Big shout out to her if you see her Alpine cooking book. It's amazing what she wrote. But, to get her up to speed with Friuli and William Hereford, the photographer, we really had to reset when we decided to do the book, because it's not a cookbook about Frasca. It's a book about Friuli. It's really a love letter to Friuli-Venezia Giulia, our spiritual homeland. And once we decided to do the book, it was really getting Meredith and William, the photographer. We kind of had to reset all the content, which made it even more fun.
Right. Wow. What a journey. And for the listeners that don't know where this little jewel of an area is in the world, maybe you can explain that a little bit.
Sure. Friuli-Venezia Giulia is the region that our first restaurant we opened 19 years ago, Frasca Food and Wine, is based on. Friuli-Venezia Giulia, if you look at a map of Italy, it's as far north as you go and as far east as you go. They joke in Friuli, Michele Bohem from the tourism board, he always likes to joke that 2 million Americans go to Venice a year, 30 go to Friuli, 20 are your staff. And he might be exaggerating a little bit, but it's really right outside of Venice to the east, next to Slovenia, below Austria.
And you are so generous and gracious and open with your staff that you take them often. And when we went together, I just remember being on the ocean, looking at the mountains, looking at the countryside. It really is a special place.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it's the northernmost sandy beach of the Adriatic is the town of Grotto. And from Grotto, it would be like if Union Station was Grotto, and in the distance that you went from Grotto to what would be the equivalent of Boulder, 25 miles, you're in the rolling wine country. And then another 25 miles past that, maybe if you got to Ned, you had mountains the size of Aspen, Colorado. So you have skiing and sea within 60 miles.
Yeah. It's insane. So we met close to 30 years ago, Aspen, Colorado. And when we met, we were obviously a lot younger. And you, when we first, and we actually were housemates, and when we first met and started living with each other and getting to know each other a bit, you became a very big influence in my life really quickly, and those times I never forget, and I just want to say one, thank you for taking the time to talk with me back then and guide me back then, because there wasn't, or at least in through my lens, there wasn't buzzwords today like mentor and things like that. But as kind of we evolve, I look back at that time, and you were an amazing part of my life and a mentor. And I just want to say, and take this opportunity to say thank you for taking the time and helping me not take that golf course job. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You remember that?
Yeah.
You talked me out of it.
And thanks for bringing that up, Mario. You know what's interesting? I think societally, we didn't have mentors back then, but maybe Generation X, which we firmly sit in, that generation, we're an independent group, but we were very open to mentorship, even though we didn't have the word mentorship.
Yeah.
Like our generation was much more common for any of us to ask for advice, listen to advice, take advice, see a path. And as someone who has 250 employees now, certain generations aren't as adept at that. They just maybe don't embrace mentorship the same way as maybe Gen X, which is always considered a more independent generation, which we were, but we were more open to mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
we had a lot less distractions too.
Lot less distractions. And I just think because there weren't the same paths in the restaurant industry as we do now, there wasn't TV shows to look at, so much content, that we had to find our own mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, I just want to recognize that and say thank you very much.
of course, thank you for being part of the journey.
And it's one of the reasons the main reason I have this podcast is to offer the insight to amazing journeymen like you that are always curious, that are always seeking to be better, and offer that insight to people that don't have that because of what we just talked about regarding mentorship. It's harder these days to ask for help. It's harder to receive help. All of these distractions. So, and that's the reason why I have this visual as well. So this isn't live, but this is an opportunity to see two guys talking or two people talking. And it's just really important that we get that humility on camera and that ability for people to have a connection with us, and more importantly, you, that have a message that's been resonating with me for the past 30 years, but also continuing. And on your path, I mean, we've worked together since then. We've have been friends for a really long time, and I see you naturally gravitate to certain people, and for them to naturally gravitate to you. What is it like to, now that we have this word and you have a lot of experience under your belt, what's it like to mentor and to be mentored? Because I remember back in Aspen, like Jay Fletcher was a big influence in your life. And
Jay Fletcher was Connie Thornburg, amazing.
Yeah.
She's still part of my life. I'm gonna do an event at Ojai in October.
Nice.
Eric Calderon, an amazing mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those people were really leaders in mentorship. They did it really organically. All three of them. Authentic. Jay Fletcher, Connie, Eric Calderon. But I think you have to be of the ilk to embrace mentorship. So, when you're talking to someone who will he or she be your mentor, they might give you advice that doesn't click to where you think you are at that point in your life, and you really have to embrace that, or the mentorship doesn't work. So you've got to be able to be receptive of mentorship, and then when you give mentorship, you have to really be committed. You can't part-time mentor. You've got to, if you're working with someone, whatever's going on that day, you've got to be, if you're working with someone in a mentor situation, you've got to be listening, paying attention to their path. And then really the best thing about mentorship is once you've made a bunch of mistakes when you're in your 50s and you've been on a dining room floor for 40 years, you can say, hey, I went down this path. This is how I got through this. And I was talking to one of our employees this week, and they're taking a big workload on. We had some personnel changes, and I told her, she's one of our sommeliers, and I told her, I said, hey, Rihanna, you're doing such a good job. This is a real reach of what you're doing. You've picked up these duties. You're going to remember this forever, and this is how you'll be able to mentor somebody. Mm-hmm. So we have to all realize when we're having those tough days, when we're having those challenging moments, when we're growing, we have to be uncomfortable. And when we're uncomfortable, we get to grow. And then we can use that information later. I mean, I think people don't realize growth and being comfortable do not live in the same square.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be uncomfortable to grow, and a lot of people don't realize that. So if you're someone who doesn't want to be uncomfortable, it might be hard for you. You might stunt your growth on a lot of things. But once you get uncomfortable and you go through that ring of fire, you will be able to have that information. It's yours forever. You'll be able to impart that to someone else.
And when you're in that ring of fire, you don't always really realize it when you're that individual, even though it's like, oh, this sucks for me right now. And so that's amazing input that you have specifically with that. And it's also really important what you said, that someone has to be ready to receive the information. I think we go through periods of time in our life where we're really ready. I think the early years in Aspen, I was really ready. And then I thought I was, and then I went, our journey of life is like this. And then we worked again together. It's like, I thought I had a skill set, and being humbled in a way that I had no idea through the journey of life, I realized I wasn't necessarily able to receive. So I've been able to receive and give, but it's like this in life, just like everything. Totally. It's important to pay attention to that.
Life is not a linear line.
Yeah.
And you just got to embrace the zigzagness and realize it's going to zig and zag, and just be ready for it.
Yeah. And I also was like looking back at kind of this conversation I wanted to have with you, and mentorship and surrounding yourself with really great people. You kind of built that into Frasca with your Monday nights, because now you've earned the right to ask for really smart, very talented, very creative thought leaders in the industry to come to your restaurant and execute whatever their passion is, which is brilliant. And I also know you did it because you genuinely care about the industry and these people. But it's almost like a built-in system, just like kind of the podcast is for me. Like, I have earned the right, now I can ask people to like have a chat. Yeah. I haven't had a talk with you in a long time.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I think if you're always, one thing at Frasca, we did our first chef collab with Suzanne Goen from Luke's and AOC in 2005. So that was before people did chef collabs. Mm-hmm. Like, that was a wild thing. We were talking about it.
It's a lot of energy and work.
A lot of energy and work. But it has given not just us energy back, but it's given communities back. I don't know how many young chefs or young front of the house people have come to a collab dinner at one of the Frasca restaurants, and because of that, they got a job in San Francisco or New York or Italy or whatever. And so there's a lot of that energy rolling around. It's really a lot of fun.
And it's interesting too, when a chef like that does spend the money for one of these Monday nights, and since they've done that experience and experience that experience, not done the experience, but experience that experience, whenever they are in a conversation with somebody, a potential employer, and they're like, yeah, I lived in Colorado. Oh, Frasca? Yeah, I went to a bunch of their winemaker dinners. It's like, that proves to that employer that they've invested in themselves and their profession, even though it's a night out.
Yeah.
Which isn't something that people typically look at as a continued education. But for you and I remember when we were in Aspen, we went to Chicago and ate it. Yeah. I mean, mind-blowing experiences. Yeah. And we invested a lot in our growth, even though that growth was eating in nice restaurants and restaurants that were thought leaders. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, dude, we ate at Jean Blanchet's Le Francais, with the greatest French restaurant in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Yeah. And it was outside of Chicago. I mean,
we drove, we flew into Chicago.
Yeah.
Stayed somewhere. It was like an hour out.
Yeah, out to Wheeling. Yeah.
Oh, man. And speaking of mentors, and in that same spirit, like, what type of person, what are some of the characteristics of people that gain your respect? Like, what are some traits of individuals that you admire that are continuous?
I find if I look at my bandwidth of mentors, they're all different walks of life. You can find inspiration from all different people. They don't have to have they just have to be people that inspire you. I mean, I think of, I mentioned earlier, Connie Thornburg, Eric Calderon, they come from the same cloth, incredible hoteliers, but they really are different people. Even though they work together at the same time. They have different skill sets, but man, they were able to really help me along. I mean, my dad always says that, he needed to write a Christmas card to Eric and Connie every year for all the guidance they gave me in my 20s as a young sommelier. And then I look at Thomas Keller and Laura Cunningham when I went to work at the French Laundry. I don't even know if Thomas realizes and Laura realizes how much mentorship they would do every day to people, because they just walked the walk.
Mm-hmm.
And they must have subconsciously knew that all eyes were on them at all times, so they had a different approach to how they walked into the building.
Sure.
At all times. And, someone asked me recently, like, you've been gone from the French Laundry for 20 years. Do you still feel the TFL effect? And I would say 100%.
I feel it through you a lot of times.
Like, people, listen, someone like Thomas Keller should be in the Hall of Fame, not just as a chef, but as a mentor, as a CEO.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I always joke, like, it's pretty crazy that he and Laura could line, and now the GM Michael Manillo, they could line up so many people to do the right thing to the best of their ability every night. Process.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
When you talk about the difference between Connie and Eric, what about their being influenced you, though? Like, what was it? Was it the fact that they took the time, or because you were also, that was your first kind of crack at it, and you had experienced a fair amount of failure before that in Flagstaff and came out of that. And I remember you were raising every penny that you made and put in your pocket, you were trying to pay your grandfather back.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, your commitment to being honorable is honorable, right? But what about their experience, that experience with those two specifically, how were they able to influence you?
Well, I think I was way in over my head. I went there as the assistant sommelier to Mark Pape. Mark Pape left after a year. I got to step into the wine director position, but they knew enough of what I didn't know to say, hey, we're here to support you. We will let you make mistakes, but you got to listen to us while you're making those mistakes. And they both did it in completely different ways. Connie is like, is she your big sister? Is she your biggest cheerleader? Or is she the frickin' assassin?
I know.
Like, you don't know. And it's all wrapped up into one wonderful human being.
Yes.
But she knows what everything's going on, and you get part assassin, part big sister, part cheerleader, all rolled into one. And then Eric Calderon, his demeanor is much more different. I think he, just through his elegant presence, you kind of
perk up a bit.
Yeah, you sit up in the chair a little straighter no matter what's happening. But he's also another one of those very supportive, hey, we're going to make mistakes together as long as we learn from them. And I think that's amazing. My team still, Peter, my business partner, Hoagland, he still talks to Eric Calderon. He never worked for Eric. So, I mean, you can just, the reverberation is just amazing.
Yeah. And I think one thing about Connie specifically, she was also kind of proving herself and coming up into her own as well. So she probably felt this, I'm in a position to learn, grow, and love others. I want to also offer that for people as well. So if you are in this period of life where you see that your trajectory is like this, take the time and help people along as much as you can, because it's only going to help you. Yeah. But there's also, you have a lifestyle that's allowed you to work really hard. Tell me a little bit about how your lifestyle has positively influenced your ability to show up for everybody, and specifically your health. You're a very healthy, it's intimidating and annoying at the same time.
Our industry, look, I get really sad that people think our industry is really tough. Our industry has things that make it tough. You know, if you're an emergency room surgeon and you have to work weekends and holidays, your girlfriend or wife's or boyfriend's parents think you're saving lives, because you are saving lives, and they give you a hall pass to those nights. If you're a maitre d' or a sommelier or a waiter or a line chef or a sous chef, you work holidays and weekends, that same loved one doesn't like your job. It's not the same. So we automatically start our career where society doesn't love what we do. So that is tough with our industry. But the rest of it is on us. And I see too much self-destruction and people not taking care of themselves. And then they think it's the industry's fault. So in about 1999, I was living on Snow Bunny Lane in Aspen. And I said, you know, I was studying, I had just passed the advanced, and I was studying for the MS. And I had a big job, wine director at the Little Nell, a lot of moving parts. And I said, you know what, I'm going to stop going out with maitre d' Keith Brown after work. If I work that night, I'm not going to go out. And that was winter of 99, and all of a sudden, my job became easier. Studying for the MS became easier. I don't know if it's what, but I met Danette after that. And being a great partner to Danette became easier. I have not gone out after work since then. So I don't go out after work. Hey, look, and I love having a good time. I love drinking wine, having an Anchor Steam beer, whatever.
Not anymore.
But yeah, exactly. But if I once I put those guardrails on myself, the industry felt so much better. And then I kind of looked at it like, you know, I'm dyslexic, so I was a very challenged student in high school and college. But I kind of look at it as like, I never got to be an A student. And A is 90% to 100% is your average to be A. If you're showing up one day a week, you've got a 5-day work week, you're showing up one day a week kind of hungover or banged up, that day's not going to be 100%. It's literally scientifically impossible for that week to be a 90% week.
Yeah.
Because you got 5 days, right? So if you break that, they're each 20%. You blow one day, you're at 80%. You're solid at above average, barely hanging on, about to become average. So and there's going to be weeks that you can't control. You're going to have your loved one's upset, someone's sick, you know, God forbid your dog dies or whatever it is, really serious stuff come into your life that won't let you be 100%. That's why you got to be 100% every single week. So when something comes up, you get sick or whatever happens, you're able to go through that speed bump A-okay. But if you're self-inflicting demerits on your week, it catches up. And what you usually see is you see people in their 20s, they're doing it and they think I'm foolish. And then all of a sudden they wake up and they're in their mid-30s and they look at me and they're like, why is this industry so hard on me? Well, no, it's not that hard. You've made it hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great insight, and it's something that, like I said, I've always, you know, once you're around someone, like I was around you a lot back then, and when I moved back to Colorado and worked at Frasca, you know, being around someone, the inertia of that experience also puts you in a position to be like, maybe I should ride my bike. I don't have to run 20 miles, but maybe I should ride my bike to work. And I think that's where I found the happy medium with my like exercise and my involvement with my body was positively through how watching you and being like, wow, this is intense. I can't believe he wakes up early, crushes it, and then comes on and outworks me at night, and I'm 10 years younger.
Well, you know, I mean, I do think I'm a process person.
Yeah.
And I think I was telling Danette Sunday, we were driving with my folks to have some brunch, and you know, a marathon is usually, if you race a marathon, it's like an 18 to either a 12 to an 18 week process. So you kind of plot it out, and you've got to whatever. And I'm doing Portland Marathon next week. So Sunday was my last 17 miler. And, you know, I got done, and Danette's like, God, you know, my wife's been married to me for 23 years.
Yeah.
She gets it. And she goes, I know that I can see the process is working. I go, why do you say that? And she goes, I can just tell how you walked out of the car, walking up the steps to get ready to go to brunch after today's 17 miler than what it was like 8 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right? Like it just, the process of the metamorphosis
That's
of the 18 weeks. So I really like that. And you know, you can't be like that year round. You got to take breaks and let your body recover. But, you know, if I do one marathon, or if I can convince Danette to let me do two, that doesn't happen often. But if I get one, that's an 18.
She wants to go to Italy.
Yeah, totally. And she just thinks it's totally nuts if I do two. This year I'm doing two.
It is nuts. I mean,
This
come
year
on.
we're doing two, and it's been a conversation. But the process is really good for me.
Thanks for bringing that up. I have all kinds of memories now of being with you back then, and your commitment to that. You know, talking about like mentorship and kind of where we were in the late 90s and our evolution, our personal evolution, our professional evolution, who we surrounded ourselves with. Have you had to update your expectations with what's happening now within the industry, locally and nationally, or
I mean, who I'd like to hang out with?
update your expectations with, because staffing back then was very different. Staffing is different. You know, there's just a lot of differences. There are more distractions now. There's a little more entitlement now with the age of the group, with the age group that we employ a lot. So have you had to update your expectations with results or the type of person or their capabilities, anything like that?
Well, you know, my minor from Northern Arizona University, I have a degree in history. My minor's in sociology. So I'm always reading this, and I'm fascinated by it.
Me too.
And I think what no one's talking about is, if you look at sociologically, if you look at post-World War II in the 50s, the people that were in their 20s in Europe, post-World War II in the 50s, so that what would have been the 50s version of Z generation, they hated agriculture. So if you think of all the great vineyards in Europe, Côte-Rôtie, Priorat, Piedmont, Germany, it didn't matter. Any of the Western European countries, the young people did not want to work in vineyards anymore. It was not fashionable. And it really took until about 15 to 20 years ago to see young people coming back to the vineyards.
Okay.
I think we're seeing that moment with the restaurant industry in the United States now, meaning less young people want to be in a service industry. They right or wrong, that generation is very affected by FOMO, and because of our phones and social media, so you see it. And if their friends get a work from home job, or they think that, and in the restaurant business we can't work from home, right there, that affects it. Service industry the hospitality industry is different. It is not fashionable right now with a lot of people our age. We've seen or younger people. They're just not as in love with it.
Yes.
That's a fact of life. And, you know, that's a whole nother topic. And, you know, I look at politically, we've got this all wrong. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. Man, let's get some great immigration here, because there are people that are young people from other parts of the world.
Yep.
They love this industry, and they should have a right to do it.
And it's a profession as they're growing
It's a
up.
profession. I was in Baja, Mexico last week.
It's so cool.
And the caliber of dedication of these young sommeliers and hospitality professionals in Mexico, I was very inspired. They're into it. You talk to friends of mine from other parts of the world. There's young people that just love this industry. You know, emerging countries that we did not think about, that from India to Africa or whatever, they're going to hotel school and they want to be doing this. Man, let's have them here.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. You know, how have you stayed in touch and nurtured these amazing influential relationships for you? Because I know you know a lot of people around the world and have a lot of deep connections, and you're able to learn and grow from some of the most influential people on this earth. Is there a strategy that you use just to nurture and attract these types of relationships, aside from just being a hardworking, sincere, honorable hospitality restaurant professional?
I think, and this goes out to any young sommelier, the best way to find and increase your your web or whatever you want to call it, is just to be on your floor. The more you're on the floor,
yes,
there's no better way to meet people. And if you're a sommelier or a server or maitre d', you're in your restaurants. The more you're in your restaurants, the more people you meet. You can't do that, you know, being in the office. You can't do that working remote from home. That will be an effect of that. People that give up on this industry, they're just not going to have as diverse group of peers.
Yeah. What? So speaking of that, you also have a great wine label, and it feels like you've expanded your offerings throughout the course of time. Maybe talk a little bit about Scarpetta, because that's not, I mean, there are hospitality threads to that, but that is kind of a result of hospitality. If I'm sitting in a restaurant and someone's taking care of me, they will eventually have wine at some point. And so tell us about that relationship that you have with Scarpetta.
Yeah, so Scarpetta is a wine company that we started with the help of Lachlan, my business partner, and I started with the help of Richard Betts and Dennis Scholl in 2007. And we started by making 150 cases of the indigenous varietal Friulano. And it's grown. It's grown a lot. It's about 100,000 plus case winery. Many different SKUs in all 50 states. It's in Mexico. It's in Canada.
I saw it in an airport in Colombia.
Yeah, South America. Yeah, it's we've got some tentacles out there.
Yeah.
But really, Lachlan, my business partner, which is interesting because he comes from a chef background, he really runs Scarpetta, and he is the reason of the growth. And I really work for him when I do my Scarpetta duties. So let's say if how we, like, I might run the Frasca hospitality group, he runs Scarpetta. We will interface weekly, get people up to speed, and then he'll say, okay, Bobby, I need you to be in San Diego last week, okay? I have you going to Orlando, and you're going to do Orlando and Tampa with Jonathan, our East Coast or our Southeast salesperson, or you're going to be in New York. You're going to, work with Claire. So he really, I mean, literally I work for him in Scarpetta. I'm an equal partner to him, but he's really growing that company. I get to be part of all the blending over in Italy. And then I do sales support with, we now have 5 regional sales managers that work, they're Scarpetta employees. And so Lachlan will say, hey, you're going to spend 5 days with Jonathan, 5 days with Chewy, and things like that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you had Michelin. So Michelin was just here. You guys clipped a star. Congratulations. What's your impression of the expansion of Michelin? What are like the pros and cons in your opinion?
I don't think there's any cons.
No? Okay.
None. I think it's a beginning journey that maybe we don't understand.
Yeah.
But I think anything that makes us work harder, that makes us more accountable.
Yeah.
I think about, like, we have not had a robust review process as we used to.
Yeah.
In Colorado or in the country. It's like journalism has many programs have reduced restaurant reviews and things like that. So it's really, you might be a 30-year-old assistant manager that got into hospitality 7 years ago, and you've in a restaurant that never went through a severe review process. that is totally feasible.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Michelin will be great. There's something for every restaurant. You can be mentioned. You could get the Green Star. You can go for a star. You can go for Bib Gourmand. It really can capture all the categories. Now, what we heard last week and a lot of hubbub was how the process or how Michelin got here. But remember, they're a for-profit business. They're doing something no other publication is doing.
Service. Yeah.
It's a service. They're putting, I think if you get reviewed by Michelin, it's three different people, not one reviewer 3 times. So they're paying, boom, boom, boom. So you don't know what's going on. I think 5 years from now, everyone will see the positive impact. You look at Florida, how positively it's impacted Florida. You look at San Diego when it went through the whole state of California. I was eating at the 2-star in Miami, L'Atelier de Robuchon last January. I had a father-son to the left of Danette that were from Toronto.
Yeah.
And they were visiting somewhere else in Florida, and they drove or rented a car and drove to Miami so the son could eat at a 2-star restaurant. And we had a couple on the right of us from I think they were from Kansas City or Nebraska, and they're like, we've never had a chance to eat at a Michelin restaurant. So all of a sudden, in a 18-seat counter restaurant, you have 4 covers that are there because of the Michelin effect. They had to rent a hotel room. They probably went and had coffee that morning somewhere.
Been thinking a lot about it.
Thinking about it. Like everyone. The Uber driver benefited. Everyone benefited.
Yes.
So I think there's so much good. And I also think what will happen is, we're just talking about how hard it is to get people into this industry. It'll be great for Colorado that if you graduate from CIA now this year, if you want to work in Colorado and work at a Michelin recognized restaurant, you can.
Yes.
That was not possible 8 days ago.
Yep. It's amazing. I guess there is I'd love for you to challenge this point, but I do see there is a discrepancy sometimes when something like this does happen to our industry and the authentic nature of someone trying to open a restaurant becomes inauthentic because now they have to have tablecloths when they couldn't afford that before, but they're going to overextend themselves to have tablecloths, just as an example. Or trying to do something and aspire for something that might not add to the guest experience. Like instead of putting maybe amuse-bouche on a plate, they're trying to put another bad example, air freshener in a bathroom. But can you speak to that at all? And
yeah, people talk about that all the time.
do they? Yeah, I don't know. It's just my own.
I don't know. If you think so, they gave out 5 1-stars for us to begin the journey here in Colorado. I think Frasca is the only one with a tablecloth. I think if you look at Wolf's Taylor, Bruto, Becken, Bosque, no one has a tablecloth.
I mean, Becken's a counter.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I brought it up for a lot of reasons.
And a lot of Japanese restaurants. A lot of Japanese restaurants
give you chopsticks.
Yeah. And they've got Michelin 3 stars.
Yeah.
So I think there's no perfect world, but I think what happened was when we opened Frasca 19 years ago, we weren't the same restaurant that we are now. And restaurants, if you choose to evolve, if you choose to add new touches, you can do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to. There's also restaurants that opened the same year we did 19 years ago that they've chosen not to evolve, and they're really happy with that. We should applaud that and let them do that.
They're still in business.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah.
When we were recognized by Michelin at the Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco. So Chef Sylvain Portet, and he got Alain Ducasse, the 3 Michelins in Monte Carlo. One of the things that I recognized through that process was the more that you pay attention, the more your eyes are open. So if you are picking up a piece of lint off of the floor or brushing off a little crumb off of a table, you pay attention to the bigger experience. And I think that is what anchored me into being successful in finer restaurants. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I look at the Frasca team.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I have 4 restaurants. I work in a different one each night. So the most I could really, if I work 6 nights a week, the most I could really work at any of the restaurants is twice in 1 week, right? Like, it's just simple math. So this is not me. This is the Frasca team. You know, I read in the New York Times article I was reading, people say, you know, we had to change for Michelin. I can authentically say that, like, Frasca didn't change to go for the Michelin award. They just did what they did every night. But what they had as I don't want to say as a motivation or as a crutch, the team had that vision of, let's look at every detail. Let's look at every detail. So it made everyone raise their game. And that's a good thing.
Yep.
That should be applauded.
100%. Yeah, that's great. That's so good. Well, congratulations on that again. I know it's almost like you've been preparing for this race since 19 years ago. 19 years ago.
You know, Rose Voda, our longest term employee.
What is she doing for you guys now?
She's not working with the company anymore. She took a break from the Frasca Hospitality Group, and she's now working at consulting for Stella in Boulder. Okay. But we talked last week, and I can say she mentioned that exact same thing. She goes, I remember when we had training at the Dairy Center. I rented because our restaurant we couldn't train in yet. We did training at the Dairy Center in Boulder 19 plus years ago. And she goes, that was brought up in training 19 years ago. So she brought up
remembers.
This, yeah.
She remembers. So another question, a great question, a lead-in question, or another question to piggyback off of that, which is great. Why isn't fine dining dead?
Because people love being taken care of.
Yeah.
And look, I've been watching journalists try to grab the low-hanging fruit since Wolfgang Puck put smoked salmon and caviar on a pizza. And everyone back then said, fine dining's dead. We have seen that news trend in food media. So they love that. But you know what? That's wrong. Fine dining's more alive than ever.
Right.
Ever. Like when we opened Frasca 19 years ago, there wasn't Corrida down the street. There wasn't Oak. There wasn't Becken. There wasn't Bruto. There wasn't Wolf's Taylor. There wasn't all these great restaurants. There's more now than there used to be. So I don't know where these journalists want to keep saying that. They love that. And either they're not good at
their job.
they're not good at math. Like, oh, there used to be this many fine dining restaurants. Now they're all across the country.
Yep.
You can eat in Cincinnati. You can eat in Omaha, Nebraska. There's a Michelin 3-star in San Diego. I mean, San Diego is known mostly as a surf relaxed town. I mean, fine dining is doing great. Is it hard because our costs have gone up? 100%.
Yeah.
But there's so many different options of fine dining for guests now. It's better than ever.
Awesome. I knew the answer. I just needed to hear it again because I love eating at great restaurants, and I haven't. And I always aspire to do more and more. What's your favorite restaurant? What are some of your handful of favorites? Not necessarily in Denver, but where have you been enjoying when you travel for Scarpetta? Where are some of the restaurants you?
So
that have an influence
this
on you?
year, things that have really touched me. This might be stating the obvious, but we went for Brian Dayton had a really round birthday. And
that's right,
a friend of ours, Courtney, had a birthday, and we all went to the French Laundry. And to be back at the French Laundry and to know, they opened in 1990. Well, Thomas took it over in 1994, so almost 30 years ago. and to see them operating at that level was so inspirational. My wife and I were in, this is kind of random, we were in Vienna, Austria to see Iggy Pop. That's what you do when you're married to Danette, see some good rock and roll. And the night before, we went to Styrek, fine dining restaurant in the Stadtpark in Vienna. So amazing. Family owned, operated on all cylinders. The sommelier was lights out amazing. Those two have been really, really inspirational. Seen so much good stuff. I ate at Anima Alone in, I think I'm pronouncing that right, in Baja last week for lunch.
I did too. That's been my favorite meal of 23.
Amazing, huh?
Yeah. I mean, groundbreaking, amazing. Everybody was so lovely and
sitting under this 300-year-old tree.
Yeah.
I mean,
dogs are asking for food.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It's just something like amazing. So it's in all different.
That's been my number one in 23 for sure.
Such a good place. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even know I was going there. I got taken there by some sommeliers from Tijuana.
Oh, really?
Like, I did not know that was on my itinerary.
In Tijuana?
Yeah, they do. And I went with Gilberto, who's been part of the wine scene for so long, Gilberto Salinas, and he set up this day, and Rohel, the CFO of a hotel company, they set up this day, and it was amazing. I was just along for the ride, and I would sat down. I had no idea what I was getting into.
Mm-hmm.
Alicia forgot to tell me to look at the website of the restaurant. It was on my itinerary.
Yeah.
That's my assistant. And I sat down and lights out.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I went with my mentor, business coach, Brad, and we took a road trip down there from San Diego because that's where he lives. But yeah. Well, I know you got to get going, but I wanted to just say thanks again for being everything you are to me, a living legend in our industry and hospitality, and you're a jewel to Colorado and this country and the world. So thank you so much for showing up and helping a lot of people along the way. You've influenced so many people. I can't say that enough. How many people you've positively influenced, and you just mean the world to not only me, but your guests and your employees and like I said, all the influence you've offered. So thank you so much, Bobby. It's been a pleasure to finally talk with you after
Thanks for having me on. Thanks, brother.